I feel like on the last episode, I didn't like properly communicate this because Aaron kept joking about like getting canceled for having like hot takes on my podcast. And I sort of like jokingly said like, oh, no one gets canceled on the show, but I feel like I didn't really convey like this is a 2.5-hour podcast about a show that, like, among the series I've made content for, isn't even in, like, the top 5 most popular on my channel. So, like, only the really hardcore Doublecast simps watch this all the way through.
And so you're like, nobody really cares about this podcast. Don't worry.
Even among those people, I get messages from people all the time being like, yeah, your videos are so, like, nice and soothing. Your voice is so pleasant. I, like, fall asleep to it. So, like, how many people watching this are going to be, like, asleep halfway through the podcast?
That's such a creepy line. People tell you they fall asleep to your voice. That's the weirdest thing anyone's ever said you.
It's my next. I feel like I could get canceled for arguing with someone in the YouTube comments, though.
Have you been arguing with people in the YouTube comments?
I have to not read the YouTube comments this time around.
I just look for mentions of me. That's really what I'm in it for.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 4th episode of Max and Ruby, a podcast where people talk about Ruby with me, Max. I'm your host, the Red Mage Eldna Doublecast, aka Fire Emblem Trace Leches. I use any pronouns, and you can find me on both Twitter and Tumblr at Doublecast, spelled D-O-U-B-L-E-C-A-5-T, because roll clip of Aaron Zek.
The 5 is clearly an S.
And I am joined today by a wonderful panel of guests. When I go to your slide, please let everyone know your name, your pronouns, if you make content, what kind of content do you make, and where people can find you on social media.
Hello, I'm Allie. I go by any pronouns, and I have a Twitter and Instagram at Artsy Entity where I draw mostly K-pop art. I'm sorry again, Mom.
Boo, we hate your pussy.
I'm also an animation, a 3D animation student, and I teach part-time teaching college students the animation production pipeline also.
Yeah. Also, which K-pop group do you draw for again?
I draw a lot of 17 art, and also sometimes NCT and TXT.
I figure I should point that out because, like, not all K-pop groups are created equal. Some people are gonna, like, go there expecting, like, I don't know, BTS or Luna or whatever.
I do not draw BTS. I'm not in the army. I'm sorry.
No BTS here, folks.
I'm Margaret. Be her. My Twitter, Tumblr, and AO3 is Pagoda. And I write fan fiction.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Mercedes. Margaret, I like that you put your AO3 in there, by the way. I was like, ooh, that's extra.
Gotta rack up those kudos somehow.
I know, I'm a fool. I should have followed suit. Anyway, I'm Mercedes. I go by she, her pronouns. You can find me on Twitter at CoffeeBees or on Tumblr at Lights Around Your Vanity. And I mostly am just watching Adventure Time right now. That's my content.
Hey, I'm Pug. I use she, her pronouns. I work in animation by day, and I post bad takes on Twitter by night. You can find me as Cappuccino basically everywhere.
The best takes you have are the ones that you delete immediately after posting them because they're just too good.
Yeah, if you really want to catch spicy tweets, you have to be there as they're being posted because they'll be gone in an hour.
Blink and you miss it.
There, that screenshot button. Hello.
Liberal use of that. All right, it's errors and omissions time. Let's just get right into it because we got to finish this episode before it hits 110 in LA and I have to turn my AC on. Okay, errors and omissions. So, we talked a bit in the last episode about the Atlas Ball fan theory. and how people basically just like pulled that completely out of their asses. And Claire Thurston pointed out that that was most definitely influenced by the Princess Prom episode of She-Ra, because there is a lot of fandom overlap there. And you know what? I buy that theory.
Claire Thurston, I take issues with that theory, actually, because the Atlas Ball theory comes because they were going to Atlas, and also Weiss goes to a fancy party once in Volume 4. Like, that's what birthed the Atlas Ball theory, and we went to see the Beast dance. Like,
Aaron Zach's dancing emoji.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, Aaron Zach's
Aaron
dancing
Zach
emoji.
posted that dancing emoji that one time.
Oh,
Yeah.
that.
Also, Aaron Zach posted a dancing emoji, like in a string of what to expect, which... What did that mean? What did that mean?
It was the bees going to the club, which ended up not even being on screen, which is kind of disappointing.
I
Yeah.
kind of liked it off screen because it birthed like a million missing scene fics from it.
That's very true. What happened at that club? We'll never know for sure. Last episode, I mentioned how I think all of the Cokehead Neon Cat headcanons that people throw around on Twitter are really funny, and Maria was like, wait a minute, Neon Cat is a raver, shouldn't she be on Molly, not Coke? And so I tweeted that at Sardeska, who is the user who created that headcanon, or created or popularized it, I don't know. And they replied that, like, Coke was the first drug they thought of off the top of their head, but, like, realistically, Neon would do every drug, just, like, whatever you put in front of her. And that sounds about right to me. Zonix said that, despite what I claimed, which was that the relics were something added in last minute between volumes 3 and 4, it was actually the maidens that were thrown in last minute. It was something Monty came up with between 2 and 3, which, I mean, considering how they were implemented, IMO, not bad.
That's honestly surprising.
Right? But the relics were planned from the beginning, and the evidence for this is that if you look at the, not the icons, the emblems of each of the academies, which I think are in an early World of Remnant episode, all of the emblems contain the relic that's stored at that academy. So, like, you can see the lamp in the Haven logo, you can see the staff in the Atlas one, you can see a sword in the Shade one, and the wreath in the Beacon emblem, which is supposed to be the crown, I think. So that's kind of interesting.
It doesn't necessarily mean the relics were from the beginning, though. It just means that they had the images for them.
I wonder if that's wonder if they, like, worked backwards. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, yo, what we put in the Academy emblems, we can totally use that. Like, that would have been a fun meeting to be in.
We foreshadowed and we didn't even know it.
That happened a lot.
That's true. That is part of the writing process. Sometimes you foreshadow things that you don't think of until after you've foreshadowed them. Aaron and I were opining a bit in the last episode about the potential of a Ruby Beach episode, and Robert Watson informed us that, unfortunately, the Ruby Beach episode has already happened in Chibi, so we're probably not gonna get it in the show proper.
We'll get a Hot Springs episode, though.
Ooh, we could still have a Hot Springs episode. That'd be fun. Wish was talking a bit about power scaling and how, like, you know, why is Ozpin supposed to be, like, on the same power level as Salem, roughly, but then gets his ass handed to him by Cinder, who's, like, a brand new maiden. Jeremy Noir Productions pointed out that Ozpin did confirm in Volume 5 that he is less powerful than he used to be because he gave a lot of his powers to the maidens and then additional powers to Crow and Raven, and that sort of drained him over the years. And then also that even though Cinder did just get the full maiden powers, she had been practicing with the partial maiden powers for a while, so, like, she's not a brand new maiden, but I think the main thing here is that Ozpin is just not as strong as he used to be.
Do you think Salem's stronger than she used to be? Like, when she fell into the pool of Grimm, do you think that leveled her up?
Ooh, that's a good question. Maybe she's, like, gotten stronger over time as she's made, like, more powerful Grimm, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, she's making more powerful Grimm. That's what we last saw her doing, right?
Yeah. Flips MCL pointed out that despite what we said about World of Remnant ending, I think either after Volume 2 or after Volume 3, it kept going all the way through Volume 4. So, oops, screwed that up. And then the Omega Green XY, a Black Sun shipper, self-professed, bravely came into my comment section to let us know a non-romantic reading of the scene where Yang loses her arm, which, you know what, actually makes some very good points, because they pointed out that, like, basically they said that the scene is less about developing, like, a romantic relationship between Blake and Yang, and more about sort of exposing the flaws and insecurities of both characters, i.e., like, Yang jumping in sort of without thinking about it, just rushing in and, you know, getting punished really hard for it, and Blake sort of watching helplessly from the sidelines as, like, her friends get, you know, hurt by her past coming back to haunt her, which is sort of like her worst fear. And, like, all of that is true, and we probably should have talked about that, but people were just too busy being gay for other women, so we kind of missed some of that nuance there.
But that also means that their growth as characters is, like, irrevocably entwined. What's not romantic about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, my take is, like, yes, everything you just said is true, but it's also romantic. So,
yeah,
you know.
You can have a non-romantic reading of anything. But yeah, so the comment is true, because anything can be non-romantically read as well.
Yeah, they made so it's just stuff I wish we had talked about, but you know, so sometimes you're just feeling it, you know, you're just feeling emotions. And finally, multiple people pointed out that I was a fucking stupid doo-doo ass for not realizing that the tower was important because it's used for communications, and I was. That was dumb. All right.
Cool.
Volume 4. This is a contentious one. People get real mad about Volume 4. A lot of people feel like this is where the show dropped off in a big way. Other people feel differently. Actually, before we get into this, we do have another new person today. So, Margaret, tell everyone, how did you get into RWBY?
Oh boy. I got into it pretty recently, I think at right after Volume 5. My sister, who's an artist, Sunny T, she is a very big fan of the show and was trying to convince me for a while to get into it, and I kept saying, oh, I don't have time, and then I watched it and never looked back.
I actually got into it at around the same time, so...
Oh, nice.
Similar position in that. In my case, it was less like... well, it wasn't my sister bothering me, it was Allie. But, you know. That and just a lot of YouTube ads, if I'm being honest. Advertising...
YouTube ads for RWBY?
At least for Volume 5, I was getting a lot of RWBY ads for some reason. I don't know what...
That would turn me off of it completely. I'd be like, fuck that cartoon always interrupting my tunes.
I think it was slightly different for me because, like, I was already following a bunch of, like Yuri and, like, Yuri-adjacent blogs who would, like, you know, I was following them for, like, Love Live, but they'd post Bumblebee stuff all the time. So it was already, like, on my periphery. I can see
what that overlap would be.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know. All right. Let's get into some overall impressions of Volume 4. Personally, I love this volume. I think it is highly underrated. I will defend it. Fight me. Allie.
I also like Volume 4. It's maybe in my, like, top 3 out of all the volumes. Although, honestly, I can't tell if it's because it's, like, the prime Black Sun season or not. So I don't know how much of that is influencing it. I personally like it just because it is, like, a quieter, like, approach to RWBY for, like, out of all the volumes, and it has a lot more character focus and development on it.
Definitely. Merc?
Volume 4 is not one of my favorites. I don't know, it just kind of feels like a nothing album to me, just because it's, I mean, I get where it needs to be in the span of the narrative of the show, but when I'm watching it, it feels like a slog to me sometimes. And I think part of that is because Yang and Weiss are in the backseat a bit, and part of it is also because I hate them all being apart. But yeah, Volume 4 is probably, like, one of my bottom volumes.
Margaret?
Yeah, it's not my favorite either. Like, I think just all of them being apart just makes it very difficult to get through, and it's a little monotonous at times, but it's a transitional volume, so I guess it's okay, but I don't hate it. Just not my favorite.
Pug?
When we finished binging the entire series, I went back and did a power ranking of the volume so I would know how I felt about it right after we finished. And apparently I ranked 4 as number 2, so I must really like it.
You did
What was
really
your number
like
1?
That's
You sound surprised.
Well, you know, we surprise ourselves sometimes. It happens. All right. Let's talk about the things we liked in Volume 4, because there is a lot to go over here. First of all, we're in Maya now, baby!
Oh yeah.
And it does look beautiful. The Maya is lovely.
The animation has taken a significant upgrade. Allie, Pug, you both have thoughts and opinions on this. Capital T thoughts, capital O opinions. Would you like to talk a bit about what the upgrade from Poser to Maya does for the show?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the most noticeable thing is that I think the animation is just, like, a lot better. There's something I was, like, talking about when I was, like, watching through it the first time where, like, it's noticeable now that, like, they have, like, so much more control over what they want the characters to do. And it's so much more obvious that, like, the people working on it now are, like, in their prime, like, program. Like, when you watch stuff from, like, season 1 or 2 or, like, 3, and the characters are, like, doing weird stuff with, like, floating around, you can tell that, like, the animators just, like, aren't comfortable working in this program. And there's, like, this weird progression from season 1 to 3 where, like, they're still obviously really figuring a lot of stuff out. But here, once they, like, make this jump into Maya, it feels like they've just already figured out so much stuff, from, like, the lighting, all the character modeling, the the water effects, the water sim.
So much water.
Yeah, I mean, Maya's industry standard, so it's obvious that, like, people that are, like, working on the show with Maya and just know what they're doing so much better than with Poser.
Background's really leap in quality too.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, last time I was on, I kind of shit on a lot of the artists for approving things in dailies I wouldn't have. This time, I want to say that the effects artist and the lighting artist really kind of killed it. The water sims look great. I love that they really utilize that. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to have those boat scenes in an earlier season. It just fundamentally wouldn't have been possible. There's also some great particle effects, specifically around the fight scenes that I think are fantastic. Yeah, Blake's ears I see are on this PowerPoint, which I couldn't stand the bow, and I can't believe it was replaced by something so fantastic. And everything isn't lit like it's high noon. We actually know that there are different types of day now, which is fantastic and overall really improves the atmosphere of the show.
I feel like when you watch them, like, moving around, like, outside of fights, like in their day-to-day life, it looks a lot more natural as well.
Yeah, the walk cycles are not this huge distraction like they were before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really curious because I know in Volume 2 Production Diary they mentioned that they were doing like motion tracking for, like, a lot of non-action stuff. Like, pretty much anything it looked like that wasn't action they'd use, like, motion tracking for. And then I assume they just, like, didn't have time to polish or clean it up. It's just why it looked like how it did in season 1, 2, and 3. And, like, I'm really curious if they kept that up in season 4, and just, or, like, if they are actually able to, like, actually animate all those, like, in-between stuff without having to rely on something like motion tracking.
Yeah, and just the undertaking of having to take assets and everything from Poser and bringing it into Maya. I've done it with 3ds Max and Maya, and it was a nightmare. So I can't imagine how much time that took and how they had to work that into their pre-production schedule. And I'm very thankful they did, because the show looks a lot better.
Yeah, one of the big things that, like, stuck out to me right away is that all of the models in early RWBY have a certain blockiness to them, a certain angularity, where I always say everything looks like it's in, like, Miku Miku Dance, but it's, like, you know, like Yang has a bit of like the Lara Croft titties, where it looks like they're just like solid objects. The hair is always very like, it's like a singular unmoving thing as opposed to like something with like a bit more texture to it. And like one thing that's like very noticeable right away is that everything has sort of been smoothed out and it looks a lot more clean.
Like Yang's ponytail can move.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Margaret, is there anything that jumped out at you about the animation?
Animation isn't really my thing. It looks good. That's about as much as I can say.
I am curious, like, do you know if there was like a divide in the fandom over the Switch to Maya where some people were like, no, I like the way it looked before?
I think there was. I think there were people being like, this is a crappier look, but they were going to complain no matter what happened, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
That's probably a side effect of we talked about this a bit in the last episode, but people deifying Monty. Because Monty,
right, because he was so pro Poser.
Because the whole reason they were on Poser for so long is because Monty was self-taught in Poser and he didn't want to animate in a different program. To the point where, if I recall correctly, he also did not want to like upgrade to the most recent version of Poser at the time. Like he wanted to keep using the version that he was used to because they were gonna like move his toolbars around or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, that was very much like a weird holdover. I actually did a little bit of research into this because, like, Pug, I don't think you had ever heard of Poser before this. Allie, I don't know if you were familiar with Poser outside of...
no, I hadn't heard of it.
I hadn't heard of it, and I do this for a living.
So
it's like an archaic dead program. So
get this. Poser was designed as an animation software for Previs. So you're supposed to use it for like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, like the step in between storyboarding and final animation.
Yeah, it means it's not for like a professional quality like finished product usually.
And then the other thing I learned, and if I'm wrong about this, someone's gonna get real mad at me in the comments, but I believe that at least in Volume 1 and maybe 2, what we're watching, like the finished product, wasn't like a render. It was it's a something blast.
Play blast?
Play blast?
Yeah, those are play blasts.
That makes so much sense.
Wait, hold on.
That makes so much sense.
As soon as I said, I was like, as soon as I read that, by the way, on like this thing, I was like, if I say this on the podcast, I'm gonna trigger Pug so hard, which is why I need to bring it up.
This is really frustrating because there are so many mistakes. When you render something, it costs money. So when you look at a mistake, you have to say, is that mistake worth going back to render, paying more money? So there are some mistakes in the show that I was like, okay, I understand maybe this flicker issue wasn't worth the cost. But if you're putting a play blast into your show, that cost is not the same. I mean, a play blast is something I kick out in a second. So in the EP who's never looked at it before, who doesn't really care about the quality, can look at it.
And that's
so wild to me.
That kind of endears me to it more, though. I'm like, oh, they're being experimental.
That makes sense why, like, so you said season 1 and 2, right? They're using...
I think it was definitely Volume 1, maybe Volume 2 was play blasts. I think Volume 3 were actual renders.
Yeah, because, like, 3, there's, like, actually, like, a noticeable, like, lighting upgrade to it. And it feels like there's more, like, depth and, like, dimension to all the characters, which is, I was like, that's so weird how they upgraded so much. Literally all they're doing now is they're rendering it.
I wonder if there even was an L&R department.
Yeah, there might not have been.
Oh my god. Not so bad.
For all of the non-animation people in the audience, what's L&R?
Lighting and rendering.
Okay.
So it's the establishing the mood and then actually kicking out the render to the farm.
Gotcha. I mean, based on my knowledge, like, because I think the animation team they were working with was like, it was just like people who they had like taken over from Red vs. Blue, which was made like at the time. I think they were like, they spent a lot of time like doing that like in engine in Halo, right? Like, that was not, like, they weren't doing, like, actual animation. It was machinima. So these were people who, like, you know, it's like they probably had animation experience, but again, they were working in Poser and with probably, like, a much, much smaller team than a project of this size would require if you were going to do it correctly. So they just did it incorrectly.
I think an L&R department is required for any animation project, but apparently not, because apparently I watched a show that might not have one.
I swear, there's gonna be someone who has, like, intricate knowledge of the production who's gonna be correcting all of this, and I'm gonna feel real stupid.
Yeah, and
for
if
bringing
you are
any of
the
this
L&R
up.
artist who worked on season 1 and 2, and I'm just being an asshole, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, like Mercedes said, I honestly kind of mad respect. I'm kind of shocked and, like, amazed at the same time.
You're avant-garde and we love you, but we're kind of happy you switched to Maya still.
You published a play blast and people watched it anyway. You Rooster Teeth posted cringe and gained subscriber.
A play blast.
One last fun thing about the new engine before we move on. This doesn't actually come with the engine. It's just like a fun bonus of having to make new models for everyone. Everyone has new outfits.
Oh yeah, and Yang gets 2 in the second outfit group because she gets an outfit for Volume 4 and then a 5 one.
Fun fact: the official name of Yang's Volume 4 outfit is the DGAF outfit.
Oh, I was like, acronyms. What does that mean? Oh, it's definitely Depression Yang looks.
It is absolutely Depression Yang.
I love that. I love that ponytail, though. I have to say, I still love Yang's ponytail.
We wouldn't have been able to get that ponytail earlier, so we're all very thankful.
Yeah, Yang only ties her hair back when she's sad, so sometimes we bum her out just to see it again.
IMO, these are, like, some of the best outfits that we've seen so far. Like, Blake's Volume 4 is, like, chef's kiss perfection, in my opinion.
She's dressed like a knight or something, practically. Like, she kind of looks like old school.
Good.
Yeah.
The high boots are a good look.
Yeah. But the best Blake to come of that outfit won't fully come until her coat is sorted off, right?
Oh, I feel like I'm gonna have to do some serious, like, wrangling of the conversation in Volume 6 to prevent us from spending 30 minutes on Coatless Blake.
Coatless Blake when she's pointing the gun, that one shot. That's the classic.
Dude, there was a week after Volume 6 where, like, half my timeline were people with Coatless Blake pointing a gun as their PFP. I couldn't tell fucking anyone apart. It was ridiculous.
That was like after, yeah, that is beautiful. That was after the new clip was released. It was all Yang looking at the motorbike. It was my entire timeline.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Just like everyone syncs up.
Yeah.
It's like you can't.
Aw.
Who are you people? All right. We've got some trauma to discuss because this is actually one of my favorite parts of Volume 4 and why I like it so much. So, like, something I think is really interesting about this volume is that, like, you know, we're coming out of Volume 3 where we had 2 major character deaths. The whole status quo has been shifted. People are completely, like, no one knows what they're doing, really, and are just trying to sort of figure out some way to move forward. And I feel like you really feel that in the whole mood of the show, and just, like, down to, like, subtle things about, like, the way characters interact with each other, and just, like, the way that they approach situations. You can feel that these are people who have been shaken by this, and it has fundamentally changed the way they look at the world. And that's something I feel like we don't get in a lot of shows of this type. I could ramble for more about this, but I want to see if other people have stuff to say about the change in tone. Margaret, do you have anything on this?
Everyone just needs a little therapy right now. Yeah.
Yes. definitely everyone needs therapy. This is the it's the PTSD season is what this is.
It is interesting to see everyone approaching things when they're so exuberant and have so much hope in the first 3 volumes, and the shift of that in the next volumes. I agree. It is like an interesting thing to see, and it comes with them going through like this trauma of the fall of Beacon, but it also kind of follows with the like underlying narrative of Ruby being like a coming of age story of these 4 girls too, right? Because this is like a point of like growth and realizing that their world is wider than they thought it was when they were just this Beacon, and that's sometimes kind of sad.
Yeah, I kind of like the way the format of this season is set up. I know some people were saying that the way like the team is split up is kind of like difficult, but I think it's like interesting at the same time. I mean, I think personally this is like a really smart way to set up like the rest of the show with a season like this, because you're seeing glimpses of all the characters in separate locations that like Atlas, like which we visit like later on in the show, so it's setting stuff up for that. And it's also like setting up characters like personal conflicts in those like separate locations too, and how they have to like deal with it when they are on their own, which I think is an interesting way to see how they are able to develop without the help of other people.
And to that end of them being separated, although I don't love it, I do think it was important for them, like as individual characters and as a team, to be apart at some point in the journey so that they could choose to come back together. Like that, I think, was invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. I think like even though I get why people like kind of dislike that everyone is split up for this volume, the flip side of that is that it feels like we really do get a better insight into every character individually when they're sort of forced to like, I guess, reflect on where they've been and where they're going. And that's something we just didn't get a lot of in the first few volumes. A lot of the characters felt like very thin, and the characterization was sort of all over the place, and it feels like it's been cleared out a lot in 4.
But is that a reflection of them being separated and being given introspective times, or is that a reflection of volume 4 being when Ruby becomes truly story-driven for the first time?
Perhaps a little of column A, a little of column B. Either way, it's good. One of like the more, I feel like touching, tear-jerking, whatever you want to say, parts of this is just like all the stuff with Pyrrha.
Yeah.
That hurt. In a good way.
Seeing Jean get like new gear made from Pyrrha's weapon is just like, directly in my feels.
People like that as a whole.
Did you not like that?
Oh no, not at all.
Aww. Yeah, explain yourself.
If I ever die, like, don't smelt down my weapon to make it go up to yourself, Max. That's just
You want it buried with you? You want your sword buried with you?
I mean,
you acting like you have a sword, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it as it is, but it's. I mean, it was so representative of Pyrrha to me to see it like melted down for Jean to wear. Did not have the same effect for me it had for everyone else.
But it carries your memory through the next like 2 volumes of the show because of that too. Like anytime you look at Jean, it's carrying Pyrrha's memory onto the show now. That's kind of nice.
She was never really like a solo kind of person. She was always about her team. So I think it would have made her happy to be a part of her team in that way still.
What I would have loved is if like Jean like just took the crown and wore it, because one of the things I was like watching this season and like watching everyone get all these cool outfit upgrades, and I was like, Jean looks terrible. He looks exactly the same. And he had like the most issues with his outfit before.
Jean would look so good in like a Sailor Moon tiara. He should wear the Pyrrha crown. You were right.
Magical girl Jean. Actually, you know what? Jean got a huge upgrade this volume because he switched from Converse to boots.
Oh, good for him. Drop too many things on his feet.
Take off the hoodie.
Yeah, he did drop the hoodie. He got that terrible haircut.
Hey, man.
He looks like he hasn't cut his hair. It's okay. Just keeps growing out.
We won't get into
his quarantine look.
We can't get into Jean haircut discourse until we hit volume 7. That's where it really picks up. That's where it gets spicy.
But anyway, I agree. Jean should have worn the tiara.
I would have been fine with that.
It's good. I can get behind that. Okay, can we talk a bit about the training video?
I love the way you tied the training video into like Jean's trauma, but also like Ruby as well. Like it really made you worked on multiple layers in that scene, so it hurt in my heart.
Absolutely. The thing that like always kills me with the video is Pyrrha, like the point where she comes like this close to saying I love you, but like she can't even do it. Like it's sad because like obviously like it wasn't made before she died, but it's like even in death she can't get the words out, if that's what I mean. Like it's god, it hurts so much. Every time I rewatch RWBY, all I can think every time Pyrrha's on screen for the first 3 volumes, bless you, is God, I feel so bad for Pyrrha, and this moment in volume 4 is the last time I feel that, and it feels so like more intensely than ever before. Just God, she deserved so much better.
You know, it's kind of depressing thinking about Jean when he first got that video, and he probably watched it and then thought, I don't feel like training, and threw the like phone aside or whatever, and then like months later looked at his scroll and it like hit him extra harder, and he's like, why didn't I pay attention? Tragedy.
It's so much worse. Margaret, do you have thoughts on this?
It's nothing that's already been said.
Pug, do you want to go contrarian corner, or are you in agreement?
I'm just trying my best to accept Jean into my heart a little bit, but also you keep pushing this Jean Pyrrha agenda I'm just not here for.
Well, Pyrrha's dead now, so you don't have to worry about that anyway.
That's true.
It exists in... Yeah, I like the training video a lot more than I like the new weapon being made from her gear, because the training video gives her agency. It's something she did for him. To be used in this way. So I think it's really sweet. Of course, I don't mind seeing Pyrrha's face again.
We all miss Pyrrha.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to get like little drops of Pyrrha like every couple volumes. Like, because when we get it again in volume 6, right? Maybe like volume 8 we'll get a Pyrrha throwback.
By the way, Pug, I feel like I should bring this up because I somehow neglected to have this mentioned in volume 2. But this is funny, so I feel like we should at least get this in while we're talking about Pyrrha. When we were watching this, your first time through, you guessed that Pyrrha was going to die within, I want to say, 3 seconds of her first appearing on screen. Would you like to tell the class how you guessed that?
Sure. I follow your Tumblr, and you don't post about her nearly enough. So I assume she must be dead. Because she doesn't appear in the group fan art.
Doesn't appear in the group fan art. Go on.
Yes, but then he went into screaming that I had guessed such a major spoiler within 4 seconds of watching it. Which I
thought you were going to be like Achilles. I thought you were going to be like, because it was Achilles. Aw, I was excited.
It was like, no, she was like, no, this girl is too hot for her to not be all over your blog.
I think that is what I said.
That is literally what you said.
It's true. If she was alive, there would be a lot more fan art.
There's still quite a bit of it, but yeah, she would be everything if she was still around.
Yeah.
Sneakers would be much bigger.
It would.
Oh, the Schneekos agenda. It's a whole thing. Yeah, one last thing about this is, like, I touched on this a little bit, but there's, like, subtle ways that, like, the way that you can feel the characters have been impacted by, like, the fall of Beacon, where, I mean, the thing that really strikes me about Volume 4 and, like, the big reason why I like it so much is that in, like, a lot of shonen anime, which, again, there's discourse about what exactly RWBY is mainly inspired by, but I think it's fair to say that, you know, shonen battle anime were a big influence here. They have major character deaths all the time, but in most of these shows, either you have something like Dragon Ball Z, where there's some stupid workaround where anytime some character dies, there is always a way to bring them back.
Can you shit on the Dragon Balls like that?
Yes. Or what usually happens is basically the character dies, everyone, you know, takes like a little bit to be sad and cry about it. And, you know, maybe now they're like more motivated to like take revenge on whoever killed them. But for the most part, they're just, you know, they're just moving on. They're just going to keep fighting because that's what you do. That's like, there's nothing to do in these shows but fight. So you just sort of have to move on. And Ruby says like, no, we can't just move on. We have to grieve. And it basically forces us to spend a whole volume grieving. And I think there's something incredibly ballsy about doing that. Like, it would have been, I feel like it would have almost been the safer option to have everyone get back on their feet immediately and just press forward. But, like, no, like, they like, slow the story down to a crawl. They make everyone sort of, like, doubt what they're doing and, like, if they can even succeed or what even the goal is. And, like, force us to go through that with them. And I think that I think there is something to be said for that because, like, not a lot of other shows of this type will do that.
I think it's even outside of the shonen genre. I think a lot of media would not take this big of a risk. I mean, they're doing two things at once, right? They're playing the Star Trek Beyond, The Last Jedi kind of trick where we're going to split up the group that the dynamic of the show is so reliant on. And then on top of that, we're really going to change the mood and atmosphere to be about grief. And I think that's incredibly ballsy of them. I think it really pays off for them. I know that is not the general opinion, but to give these characters this space to breathe, I think is really necessary. Otherwise, again, Pyrrha's death would have just been brushed aside, or they could have cut to a point in the future where this had been played out already, but it doesn't actually give screen time for it. And yeah, I think they made a great decision here.
And I think well, I don't know, I don't interact much with the fandom, but I think to like discredit season 4 a lot is like not thinking about how much of like impact it's setting up for like future stuff to happen. Like the whole like Blake's whole arc in this is about her being able to like lean on others and like trust like her teammates, which I think is a huge like payoff for like season 6. And they're like really trying to like set that up where she's like really overcoming it in this season. Just a lot of early story setup stuff that I think is really important to do, even though like I think a lot of people just see it as like it's moving slowly.
Exactly.
Volume 4 is kind of like those two She-Ra seasons that were split up. So one of them just feels like half a season. Volume 4 kind of feels like that to me though too. Like, yes, they make you like that's why like it is just set up though too. Like I do think it's important that it happened, but it feels like half a season sometimes to me.
Yeah. I have a whole thing about that, but there's a slide for pacing, and so we can sort of get into that more there. One line before we move on that like always strikes me is when I think it's like when they come to the fork in the road at Kuroyuri and they have to decide like if they want to go up the mountain, if they want to split up the group. And I think Ruby says like they're going to be fine, Jean, like about Ren and Nora going up the mountain. And Jean says, you don't know that. And like that's such a small thing, but it hit me so hard. And it's like, no, like, they've already seen death with their own eyes. They've watched their friends be taken from them, and now there's just always that fear lingering with them that like who's gonna be next.
I do think Ruby and Juniper like went into things feeling like immortal almost in the first few volumes, right? Like they were kicked ass, they'd gotten to Beacon, they can do anything, and they don't feel that anymore. So you're right, that does hit like hard.
Exactly. There's a real sense of not just loss but fear. And again, these are like new emotions for the show. We're going to places that it hasn't taken us before. Hey, Allie, do you know what time it is?
She does not.
She doesn't know what time it is. Well, it's real Black Sun hours.
Oh my god! Wow.
I'm glad you invited a Black Sun, so we don't have to try.
So not to pretend.
All right, look.
You're like holding your nose right now.
I tried on the last episode. I really tried. I was, you all were being mean, and I was trying my best. I'm just bad at it.
Okay, look, I feel bad after the last episode, because, just based on, the people who I follow and I'm mutuals with, this podcast is gonna get B-centric sometimes, but, there's room for other ships here. I'm not gonna act like that's, this doesn't have to be all Bumblebee all the time, and, like, Volume 4 is the real Black Sun hours. And I actually like Blake and Sun just, like, as friends. Like, I think they have a good dynamic. I've talked about this before, and I will say this again. Like, I have no animosity for Black Sun shipping. It's just not my ship personally. But, like, okay, let's talk about the actual show. This isn't even necessarily a shipping.
Well, I will say, it was interesting listening to, like, the Volume 3 podcast, because, like, the scene where, like, Yang loses her arm, I've never personally read it as, like, romantic, but it was interesting to hear, like, a take on it from, like, that perspective. So I was interested in, like, the changing perspectives of that scene. But I am the Black Sun shipper, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said earlier, like, this season I like it a lot, and I think a lot of it probably is because I like Blake and Sun. I wouldn't even call myself, like, I said I don't really interact with the fandom much, so it's hard for me to be like, yeah, I'm a hardcore Black Sun shipper, but I definitely do prefer it over almost any ship in the show, just because I really think that in this season especially, you see a lot of how, like, Sun is kind of trying to help Blake come to terms with the fact that she needs to be able to, like, lean on others and, like, trust other people again. And I think I personally think that he's the one that kind of, like, helps her, like, come to terms with that in this season. And I think that the conversations and, like, dynamic that they have when they're just talking is, like, really interesting in this season too. And I think it always has been. Sun and Blake are such, like, polar opposites that I think it leaves a lot of room for, like, really interesting and just, like, light dialogue, but also, like, really heavy dialogue when they have really conflicting, like, viewpoints too.
I mean, even the shot is fantastic. Who doesn't want to be held in Blake's strong arms?
But, like, I like their vibe too. I just don't see romance in it.
Yeah, they grow to be good friends.
Yeah.
Like, they spend all their time like talking about other people. Like, they don't talk about their relationship ever. There's, like, he's there to help her, not to forge something between them. But sorry, I'm not being like Black Sun sucks, because I do like the
I feel like there's
I think that I think that's, like, important. I honestly, like, for me that is, like, probably kind of why I like it. Like, Black Sun is because it feels less like they're trying to, like, get together and more like they're trying to help each other accomplish their personal goals, which I think is what's, like, actually important for, like, a relationship like this. Especially in shows that are, like, not really romance focused. I think that's for me is, like, where, like, the peak romance, like, if there is romance, comes into, like, action focused shows, is, like, just these, like, smaller interactions that aren't, like, necessarily like, I'm trying to date you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're making some points.
I've always said there's validity here. I just personally am not into it, but
I mean, how horrible it would be if Sun was really kind of pushing that agenda, and how fantastic the season is that it is. I agree. I think there is some romance in strong, friendship type relationships, and it would be so terrible if he was, like, hitting on her at every other turn. So.
Oh my god.
No, I don't think, like, I don't like it. Like, when he is kind of hitting on her, it comes off as, like, really, like, ham-fisted anyway in this volume. But I just mean, like, even when Sun gets wounded and falls into Blake's arms, it's about Team Ruby and how that reminds her of Yang getting hurt. It's not about her being worried for Sun. Like, then I would read it more romantic, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that. Well, yeah, the whole, like, I mean,
think their friendship is really strong and important to, like, both their characters. Absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, I think that moment is, like, definitely where Sun gets injured is definitely supposed to be, like, forcing Blake to, like, really face, like, the problems that happened in season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think it would have been, like, like if that had happened with someone that like wasn't like I don't think it could have happened with Ruby just because they're split up right now, but like because it happened with someone else that she's like really close with, it is like hitting hard again.
Yeah, but I just mean like if there was a romantic arc built in them, wouldn't him being hurt being more worried about him dying? Whereas because he's there to be like her rock while she gets over things and like her friend and stuff, this connects her to like an outside arc more than like an internal one, because they don't really have like an internal story between the two of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, okay, look. Putting aside shipping, because there's gonna be someone who's upset that we spent this much time on it. Like, I think
I'm willing to be convinced of Black Sun. I'm willing.
I think the core thing that we're all like the core point we're all getting at here is that Sun is really important to Blake's character development because he gives her some perspective that she desperately needed. Like her
Sun is a great bro.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Her thinking about having to run away and like being sort of a burden on her team or like a danger to her team basically just by being around them was sort of so out of whack that she needed someone to show up and just, you know, say like, no, like people like you and help you and support you and want to be there for you because they like you. Like you're not a burden on them. And you know, it's like that's an important bit of growth that we really needed, and it's fun to watch that play out.
Yes.
Gave her some perspective she really needed. It's a fantastic way to put it, I think. Also, it's kind of funny that as you get to know Sun more, like in later volumes and then in like Before the Dawn, he's just kind of blowing off his team and being sort of a dick right now, though.
It's very funny.
She calls him out on that, right?
What?
She calls him out on that. She's like,
yes.
He's like, oh, you're not with your team, and she's like, yeah, is Neptune below deck?
Yeah. She was right to, because they're all mad at him back home right now.
Do they touch on that in the novels?
The whole novel is like Scarlet is just a bitch to him about it the whole time because of it. He's like, well, what are you gonna do? Go to the bathroom and then leave us? And he's like, shut up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sun getting like that's like the thing. Sun going off to chase Blake around for 2 volumes becomes like the thing that like it's like his freshman year story that they're gonna like hang over his head for the rest of the school.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like constant.
I have to say though, Sun's perspective was kind of like good in the books, where his vibe was just like, I don't know, people just gotta follow their own bliss and do what they think is right. And I was like, okay, that's not so bad. You're wrong, but also I see where you're coming from.
It sort of gets at the idea of like Blake and Sun being very much opposite in that way. In that
true, like Blake takes duty so seriously and Sun not so much.
Just incredibly carefree. Just couldn't think less about these consequences.
You see that in their fighting styles too, how they're like kind of discordant, like they're like jumping on each other's heads and like giving each other missed like they end up getting the job done, but they work kind of clumsily together, and it's probably because they're such different versions of the world.
It's playful, it's fun.
Yeah, no, it is fun for sure.
Blake steps on him. I'm sure the Black Sun shippers are not complaining.
No, it's like it's cute clumsy, but it is clumsy, you know? It's like
okay, important question. This is extremely important, right? Does Sun get pegged?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Sun would be pegged not because he's super into pegging, but because he's up for anything, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
He's just down for an adventure.
Yeah.
Who knows where this will take us? Other highlights, getting to meet Blake's parents.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
Oh, that was nice.
I love Kali and Gira. Both for
Does Gira Belladonna get pegged?
Oh no.
So to your heart, you know the answer is yes.
The only het ships that are worthwhile are the men getting pegged ones, so I'm gonna say yes.
Absolutely. That's how I rate every single het ship ever.
Is there pegging? No, not worth my time.
That is how I feel. That is how I feel exactly.
Well, then why do you hate Jean and Pyrrha so much?
Oh, snap. I don't think Pyrrha would peg. I think she'd be like, oops, sorry, did I hurt you?
Oh, actually, you know what? You're on to something there. Right, okay, so...
She did push him down that one time, though.
Watching, Gira get mad at Sun for just being Sun is very entertaining to me. I'm normally
Meet the In-Laws is very entertaining.
I'm normally not a huge fan of like dads being super protective of their daughters and stuff, because it always feels like a little weird and creepy. But this was just sort of like, really? This is the dude? Like, well, you know, she didn't bring him home. He followed her there. But like, this guy?
Yeah, because he's not threatened by Sun. He's more just like, seriously about Sun. I think that's why it's not
he's
creepy.
Disappointed.
Yeah.
It's not the socializing.
He's exhausted by Sun.
And understand.
I will say a point in Black Sun's favor is when they're having tea and Sun is just like, not that I think your daughter is attractive, not that I think about that, any kind of thing. Like, that is a funny rom-com moment. Like, that's cracked me up.
Oh, absolutely. All of those scenes are a lot of fun.
We're a very unbiased panel, as you can tell from how we talk about.
I try to keep an open heart to most ships.
This is also the beginning of my Sun Wukong MILF Hunter jokes, because there are definitely a few moments where it absolutely looks like Kali is making eyes at Sun.
Does it?
I don't see it.
Does it?
I mean, look, is it enough for, like, a legitimate ship? No. Is it enough for a meme? Yes.
Yeah, who can argue that? Wait, don't you have a name for them, like, as a ship?
I think the name is Cat's Cradle.
Ooh.
Oh my god.
God. Oh my goodness.
Don't they just win points from that alone?
Right?
They win and lose at the same time for that one, though.
Coming up with goofy ship names is half the fun of this show.
Oh my god. Pussy
It's
Magnet.
It's not, because then I panic when we get to the slide with the ship names, and I have no idea which characters they are. Like, I need a guide.
Ask me, I'll guide you. I'll be your ship guide. I know them all.
We're professional.
Yeah.
She is. She's the professional chaotic multi-shipper.
Yeah.
The conversation with that Blake has with her dad near the end of the volume is like a really nice little like emotional moment.
Yeah, but why Blake stopped taking sugar in her tea? What that about? What up?
Because she grew up.
Yes. Yeah, it's like
I think it's really nice.
Turned into a tea snob.
That's like
Yes.
that's like I think a really cute like not way of her saying I'm grown up, Dad. It's like I know I've changed a little bit since I've seen you the last time. And, like, I think it's like a nice way of doing that. That's not so just straightforward.
And she still takes the tea, so she's like, but I'm still willing to remember who I was here too. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's deep. Okay, cool. Sorry, Blake, rescinded.
No, that whole conversation I think is just really well done because it starts off like awkward and then it gets to like kind of normal and then it develops into something like serious, and it has like a really nice progression from that. And it's, I don't know why it's in my head as like one of the standout like Ruby scenes, but for me I think it's like a really good example of just like how you take a scene from like something that is not necessarily like supposed to be serious, but then it just builds into that really naturally, and so it doesn't feel like it's trying to force a serious moment down your throat or anything like that. It feels well earned.
I like that conversation.
Shocking.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Damn it.
That's honestly like one of my favorite Ruby lines, like, series wide. I kill myself laughing every time.
It is very funny.
Well earned.
What you said was stupid.
What you said was stupid. Yes.
Yeah, I like part of why I like that scene is that I think it shows like how the writers have improved a lot in the sense that there were a lot of scenes in early Ruby that felt incredibly awkward, and this one feels awkward on purpose. Like it's uncomfortable, but you can tell that you're supposed to be a little uncomfortable because it's like, you know, they haven't seen each other in so long and so much has happened that it's like it's gonna be hard to like even know where to start here.
Scenes like this in Ruby make it feel more like they only wrote one draft in the early volumes, and then in the later volumes they like revised more.
That is a perfect explanation. That is exactly how it feels.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. That's how I feel about it.
That
'Cause
really
it's like they layer stuff in so much more that you really only do in like second and third revisions often.
that really is the whole like that's the core of the early Ruby problem. Is it's just publish the first draft, publish the play blast. It's the same principle.
Don't polish the motion track to motion.
I think that speaks to how much the early volumes were like centerpieces for fight scenes a lot of the time, and then everything in between was just like filling it in, right?
Yeah.
That's very true, yeah.
And we'll render our fight scenes.
Yes, it's just the fight scene. That's probably what they did, honestly. The fight scenes were rendered, nothing else was.
I'm gonna have an aneurysm.
This is so funny to me. Pug, on a more positive note, we get Ilya for the first time here.
Oh my god, I love her so much. I normally decide if I like a character within about 4 seconds of seeing them for the first time, for better or for worse. I love Ilya. I know this is not perhaps the volume where she gets the most screen time, but I'm glad you stuck her on this slide, even if you really should let Black Sun have their own slide.
Even, like, I mean, here's the thing. Well, I had to put her somewhere. Even
She has her own slide. She shows up in the volume. Damn.
She deserves it.
Yeah, I know.
She's so cute.
Ilya gets her own slide in Volume 5, don't worry.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just being a jerk.
Those are the real Ilya loving hours. I mean, even what we see of her this volume is just, like, cool on principle. Like, without even knowing much about her, just, like, the design, the weapon, like, A+ work, man.
I didn't really get super into Ilya until my second watch of Ruby. Like,
No, I was like, I like her. What's her name? Max is like, God.
it's like someone just clicks with you. That was Cinder for me. I was like, hello, tell me more. So you see her shoe and I was excited.
That tracks. God. Alright. Let's talk about fights. Because while I do have an entire slide for talking about why the fights suck now, they're not all bad. There's some points to be made here. First of all, I will defend Team Ranger versus okay, it's technically called the Nuclevi, which is like it's modeled off a creature from like Scottish folklore, which looks very similar to this thing. Fun facts. But no one calls it that. It's the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
Never heard it called that, even once.
Really?
Call it that.
Is it just me who calls it that? It can't just
Never
be.
in my life have I heard
I
that.
appreciate the name, personally. I will take to calling it that, too.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but you coined it just now. On this podcast.
Okay, I swear to God that like people on Funky or like the Ruby subreddit call it the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing.
No, you've
tube
been
man.
calling it this for months. I will give you that, but you are the only person I've ever heard refer to it as such.
Yeah, never heard it.
God,
You're a Reddit expert and you've never heard it.
Oh, shut up.
Margaret, do you spend a lot of time on the Ruby sub?
Not well, before I found Tumblr, yes.
Yeah, I'm same. I sort of like burned through the amount of Ruby content on Reddit. I was like, I need more.
Yeah.
So,
I can't even get on Reddit anymore. They locked me out.
rip. However.
Wow.
Sad.
But yeah, I like this fight a lot. I think, like, one thing I think is kind of cool about this volume is that, something we discussed a little bit in 3 is, like, the Grimm feeling like more of a threat. You know, they have, like, an actual... You get the sense that, like, you know, they're actually dangerous, and you have to be kind of afraid of them. And they really cranked that up this volume with more, like, kaiju battles. So you have, like, Blake and Son versus the Sea Fei Long, or in this case, the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man, which gets an entire, like, tragic backstory for Ren just to build up how threatening this thing is. And, like, it does feel... It's like...
Wait a second. Was it threatening? Was Ren's backstory tragic to build up how threatening it was? Or was it threatening to build up how tragic Ren's backstory was?
It accomplishes both. You know what I mean. It accomplishes both giving Ren a tragic backstory and building up this enemy they're about to fight.
Yeah, they work in tandem.
Yes.
I think as, like, a monster, it's very effective. Like, the scream it lets out at the end of, like, where, like, Ren looks at the town and realizes it's heading towards the town, and like it cuts to black and you just hear the monster scream. That was like one of the moments I was like, wow, that's really good like sound design, because it sounds like really freaky and like not like anything normal that you've ever heard.
The beginning of Ruby's sound design development. She's gotten really good lately.
I really like the design. When I first saw it, I was like, it's kind of dumb that you would think that the Grimm would have a concept of someone riding horseback, but once I figured out Salem was making them, it made a lot more sense.
It kind of does look like someone who's never seen someone ride horseback. Thinking what it might look like from a distance, though, it's like a shadow.
Well, like a horse doesn't have a concept that like they look like a person should be on it. That's like something that a person saw. So I was like, well, how does the Grimm? Anyway, that's just the me problem. But now that I know made, it makes a lot more sense.
You connected the dots, is what you did, and that's beautiful.
Thank you for saying that, because I didn't connect shit.
The Grimm do, like, there does seem like much more distinct Grimm that they fight throughout this volume. Like, even the Geist they fight, like, right at the beginning of the volume as well, like, feels like its own battle, whereas a lot of earlier ones, it's just like hordes of Beowulfs that they're smoking out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like the fights feel like there's a lot more distinct elements to look at. Like there's more variety from like between different kinds of Grimm, as opposed
and
to
they're again all story
go
driven,
ahead.
right? Like, yeah, sorry. They're again, they seem more like story driven. Like each fight, like it's not just about the fight; it's about what does the fight mean to everyone who is fighting, which is good. I like it, but.
Can I ask a dumb question? I can tell that we're going to talk about fights in the bad category later. So does that mean people didn't like these fights, or does that mean people didn't like the other fights?
I have like problems with like the fights overall in general, mostly when it comes to like the actual like characters fighting, and like the way it's animated. I think.
Yeah, it's like the fights like are good in like thinking about the fights, but when you watch them, they're not as like technically exciting. Is how I feel about them.
Oh, so we just don't like. So we really don't like the like fight choreography of either the wacky flating.
I think that actually. So one thing I wanted to say about the flailing tube man is that the fight for him feels very interesting, in that it feels very much like a video game like boss fight where he has like really distinct. He actually, I feel like, has like a quote unquote fighting style, even though he's like a Grimm.
Yeah.
There's like distinct like moves and things that he does, even though he's like very chaotic.
You have to expose his weak point for massive damage.
Yeah, and it's weird how like the Tube Man and like Tyrion, they're both like the villains or like the boss, quote unquote, in the scenes that they're in, but they feel like they have a more distinct fighting style than like any of the actual characters that they're like fighting against, which is, I think, the unfortunate side of most of the fights in this volume.
Yeah, we'll get into like critiques of the fights later, because again, I got a whole slide for that.
I mean, I really like the Tyrion fight as well. I think it's really fun that he runs away with his tail between his legs. I think it's a good learning experience for Ruby that Crow takes the hit because she did something stupid. They're not, infallible on the battlefield, which is a lesson they're just going to keep learning, I guess.
Yeah.
But I like Tyrion. He's weird. He brings like a weird energy to the villains that nobody else really has.
Oh, I don't feel Tyrion at all. He bugs me. Crazy guy.
I think Tyrion is actually one of the few characters I saw. I was like, oh, I don't like him. This archetype is so overplayed. I'm tired of this chaotic evil answers to one person kind of character we've seen it a million times. And then like the more and more I saw him, I was like, oh, actually it's kind of fun. He's fun against the backdrop of everyone else to me.
Yeah.
I agree.
He just creeps me out.
Catalyst for a scene that makes me giggle so much. So
What does he do?
oh, it's later.
Oh.
No one else will find it funny. I will be laughing on the floor. Everyone else will be sad.
I wonder how much of the Volume 7 episode you're going to spend on the floor.
So much of it. There are tears spraying to my eyes just thinking about it.
I can't wait. Margaret, do you have thoughts on this?
Not particularly.
All right.
Oh, I like how they use tactics more in these fights too, though. I have to say, like the Ranger fights, anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even in like the Black the Blake Sun fight, it feels like it's very like teamwork oriented fight also.
Yeah, they do, because they have to take out the wings. Like they work with the captain too. Like yeah, you do see more like
oh my god, the people actually being effective for once.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun little change of pace.
Standards.
The NPCs contributed. It's fantastic.
It's like the one fight in like a WoW like level whatever where you get like a vehicle portion. Just let someone else do the work for once. Yeah, I think there's sort of like a shift in philosophy, and again there are like positives and negatives to this, where in like previous fights it's sort of like everything is very clear and easy to like parse, even though it's moving incredibly quickly. But like now, because things have been slowed down a bit, it feels like they're sort of like, if this makes sense, like showing their work more. Like it's easier to tell exactly like what everyone is going for in each individual fight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like you can see the thought process of the characters making their moves.
Well, and they say them out loud too.
That's
yes, and sometimes Jean just gives people orders.
Yeah, another point in the shonen anime category.
Yes.
Yeah, they have Jean just there to yell out orders in the first fight. He doesn't even have a weapon.
Oh, just he gets to be fucking Jean for one last scene.
Just run around in circles and then get his head knocked out.
Peeing and pooping his pants. All right, we have a couple more random other things that we liked from this volume. Weiss gets a little more character development that does not involve her being racist, which is a nice change.
This is the volume where Weiss's defiance really comes to like the forefront of her character development, which is nice. Like where you see her really starting to rebel against her family.
Yeah, that's something that they sort of like hinted at being a thing starting in volume 2, but they haven't really had an opportunity to do anything with that until now.
Well, like volume 3 was like her deciding, right? Like that was her whole interaction with Winter in volume 3, was deciding what path she can take. And volume 4 is when she's like, I've made the decision, now where do I go from here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting having her like because in volume 3, you're right, she's like making the decision, but she's still kind of like physically separated from her family. And then when she has to like actually face it head on, she in this volume has to like actually make the conscious decision to like act out.
Yeah. And also the move of the lifetime to sing a "Fuck you, you don't own me, Dad" song at her dad's charity concert.
Power move.
Using her
I love the
professional singing for good. What?
Gira versus Jacques, being able to see like the juxtaposition of them as like parents. Like we get Blake's scene with Gira versus how Jacques is with Weiss, and it's a fun like look at the different parents and their parenting styles. And
yeah, that's really interesting. And there's Tai also, so there's like a lot of like variance in like the father figures in their lives too.
This is a very dad-centric volume.
Dad's the volume.
It's a dad-heavy volume.
And Crow is there to be a like fake dad for Ruby, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Iron Daddy's also there.
Yes.
Yeah, with his crazy arms. This is the volume where he has crazy arms in that one scene. They're animated really weird. They're like skinny and stick out funny.
I didn't even notice that.
Oh man, someone just was passing the screenshot around a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, no, I can't unsee it.
I hate things like that where it's like some minor thing that you can watch it like 5 times and miss, and then as soon as someone points it out, it's like, this is all I can see now.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite Ironwoods, though, is when he's just going like slightly unhinged with the 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely agree. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
It is, he has one of the characterizations that I think is like the most consistent, with like a really good through line from beginning to end, where you can see it being set up. It's like you see the whole progression, and it's like even when he goes off the deep end, it like feels like it makes sense how he got there.
Yeah, look at his beard. Look how far it's come.
Yeah. Everyone knows that growing
crazy.
Everyone knows that growing a beard turns you evil.
It's true. It's classic. It's a classic. So they're just gonna hold Ironwood down and shave him to like solve the Atlas arc.
Yes.
That'll solve it.
That's like Sakura cutting her hair in Naruto. She's like, I'm not who I was before, but it's like Ironwood shaves his beard. I'm not who I was before.
Absolutely. I thought take that with Ironwood is just on a lot of painkillers right now, and it's making him act out.
Oh my god.
Broken man.
Just needs to change his meds.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was just flayed. He's probably on like a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah, very true. Also, this is like a fun side note about like seeing like Weiss on her own is it took me way too long to realize that because Weiss is Snow White, Klein is all 7 of the dwarves. That's why he keeps changing, he keeps like doing all the voices and stuff.
Oh.
That was one of those things I was watching. I when it happened, I was like, "What in the world is going on?" And then like it was one of those things I realized after. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what was happening. I guess that's kind of cute."
Honestly, same. It took me way too long to pick up on that. And they were like, his semblances. He has many personalities. I was like, oh.
Oh, that's a semblance.
Yes.
Wow.
God. Your semblance is shtick.
It's better than bad luck.
True.
Don't get me started.
Speaking of bad luck, we get some Crow and Raven content this volume. I love Raven. I'm always here for her.
Raven rules.
Raven is great.
She's awesome.
Mom of the year for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I have seen multiple pieces of fan art now where like it's like a beach day Ruby AU where
she's holding her upside down.
Yes, where Raven is holding like a little kid Yang upside down, and it's so
She's the Chris Hemsworth.
it's so funny that like multiple people have done this.
Oh, it's so good. I love those ones.
But yeah,
Perfect mom style.
but yeah, we get like our first little bit of insight into like what's going on with Raven. I like a lot how she's built out, because you know that there's like something going on here, but you don't like really get a sense of like what her true perspective is until later. People have thoughts on this, or just like her in general in this volume?
She really comes into play for me in Volume 5. Like, Volume 4 feels more like her to flesh out Crow and give him a scene.
This was just a hint of her.
Yeah, but it was like to rally up and be like, Raven's going to show up and it's going to be the best.
Exactly. Just a taste. I do love all of the Raven foreshadowing in this volume, because like there are so many moments where Crow like looks over his shoulder and sees the bird, and like you wouldn't even think about that when you're watching it through the first time, but it's like very like it's like all over the place once you know to look for it.
I mean, the birds are all over the show, like when you know to look for it.
Oh yeah.
So.
I mean Crow as well, but like yeah, I think that's just one of those points where it like really sticks out to me, because again, this is a show that sometimes feels like it's allergic to the concept of subtlety, and so seeing them put stuff like that in is a lot of fun.
Hey, so were there given names, Crow and Raven, and Oz was just like, well, that's a freebie, or did he like rename them after he gave them their powers?
I mean, my theory for why Ironwood wanted Winter to be the Winter Maiden is literally that.
Well,
Yeah.
if they were Team Stark, they would have had their names before.
What?
If they were Team Stark, they would already be Crow and Raven.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, he literally
well, maybe they were like Quiznar and Rowena.
Okay.
God.
I was like, when Ozpin gave them power, it wasn't like he knew what it was going to do to them. He kind of like was like, here's some power, and then the power manifests in some like way that is like related to them.
Ooh, I like that. I like that theory
yeah.
a lot. What if was that what he did to the maidens too, and that just manifested? Imagine he's just throwing shit out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I kind of just like him shit posting though. Like, oh, that'll be funny.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
literally
that.
it. I mean, I have a theory that Summer Rose died because she was sent on like a mission to claim the power of the Summer Maiden, and it went wrong somehow. And like, why was she sent to get the Summer Maiden powers? Because Ozpin saw her name on the class roster and was like, "Holy shit, you got to be kidding me!"
Well, I mean, wasn't Autumn? No, her name's Amber. That's not super. The Spring Maiden was Vernal before. That's also
Vernal.
You're onto something. What?
She wasn't really the Spring Maiden.
Yeah, but I sort of feel like the Spring Maiden that was killed was also named Vernal.
No, it's a possibility.
It's not impossible. Another fun thing. Not actually, this isn't a fun thing. This is a sad thing, but it's a thing I like a lot. Is Ruby's letter at the end.
Her crazy handwriting that's just scribbling.
How does she write so small?
Yeah, I just think I like that moment because it's a good, like, sort of summary of, like, the themes of the show and, like, where it's going from here. And, you know, give you some insight into where her head's at, which I don't think we get enough of.
Poor Ruby.
Poor Ruby. Give my girl some
we're
character
gonna
development.
Volume 8 is gonna be a good Ruby volume. I'm
Gonna happen.
Don't
putting it out there. I believe in it.
Me at Ruby Rose. Don't you ever get tired of being nice? Don't you just want to go apeshit? Well, maybe someday. All right, let's air some grievances. First of all, we've switching to Maya has solved a lot of animation issues, but it's also created its own set of issues. Allie, I feel like you specifically feel strongly about this, so why don't you just go off?
Yeah, I think it's like an issue where, I mean, Maya, you can obviously like do everything that they did in Poser and better, so it's weird to me that like there's such a shift in like the weight of everything. But my issue is like everything in like general, but especially noticeable in like the fights, is there never feels like an explosion of energy in fights like there used to be. Everything feels like it takes place in this kind of like mid zone where they're kind of like running at a slightly above average speed and they're like attacking, you know, like at an average pace, and nothing ever like, there's never like a moment where a character like uses their like gun to like really ricochet themselves like insanely fast forward or anything like that. Or there's just like this like loss of like weight I feel like it had. I remember like we were back in like the volume 1, Maria was talking about how like the best thing about like some of the fights is that the weapons, even though they aren't real or realistic, they feel like they have weight behind them. I don't feel that on a lot of the fights. And in like smaller moments, there's like multiple moments where a character like slammed their fist on the counter and it feels like the wimpiest like eh. like that feels like their hand like stops like a millimeter like or like yeah like right above the table or something. Like it feels like they didn't even hit it. And there's just like a lot of moments like that where the animation just feels kind of like weak in general to me.
I agree that the fight styles don't seem like as dynamic in Volume 4. I think that's why they cut around by doing things like using tactics or using like more close-up angles and stuff like that. And like I think like kudos to them for trying to like work with what their strengths are right now. But I think that this is also like a volume of huge growth, right? Like they're just figuring out what they want to be doing moving forward.
Yeah, I'd say it's changing in an interesting way because, like you said, it's more tactics focused, which I think is kind of smart because they don't have someone like Monty to help them with like the really intricate like fight choreography anymore. So they kind of have to like adjust the way the fights work now. And I think there are some really successful fights in the show too still, but it's just very different. And I don't want to get into like fandom discourse because I know like one of the big things for people was because like the fights were like a huge draw of the show. That's why like people like enjoyed it so much in previous volumes. And I think what they're doing now is just very different and not necessarily like a whole lot worse. From like an animation perspective, I think it's worse. But I think from a fight standpoint, I think that it's like a smart choice to like do something where it's a little more story focused and a little more tactics focused, because it means they can focus more on what I think the writers and like the animators are actually already talented at.
Like playing to their strengths. I think that they're getting better at more like dynamic fights like recently too. Like 6 there's some really sharp ones. Like
I would
Cinder
agree.
versus Neo is like really sharp, I think.
Yeah, and we can sort of get more into that when we get to those episodes, but yeah, I agree. I think the one, because like obviously like I have plenty of critiques of like Monty and how he ran the show for the first few volumes, but like the thing that like everyone is sort of in agreement on there is that he did have a kind of, I don't know about unique, but a very like he had an extreme talent for like fight choreography and like, you know, the pacing of fights, like again giving things weight, giving things impact, that, you know, it does feel like they lost that, and you can definitely, you get the sense that something is different, even in the fights that like I do really like and do feel exciting. It definitely feels like there's a an element missing from what was there before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that...
It's a big learning curve.
Exactly. And that's going to
Yeah.
bother some people more than others. Like, it didn't bother me a lot, because this is not the kind of thing that I get into the weeds on. There are some fights later on that are actually just bad, but, you know, that's the Volume 5 episode.
My fine is the pacing.
Ugh.
Anyway, that's why.
Well, that's why we'll burn that bridge when we get there. Pug, is there anything that you were kind of bothered by when it comes to the animation?
No, I feel the need to defend them now, but we're on the bad side. So
No, do it. I want to hear.
Let's argue.
I hear you that the fight choreography is better in earlier volumes, but better is such a subjective term when the fight choreography is good, but the animation looks like it belongs in a Miku Miku dance. So yes, I hear all the points you're making, and yet I would take the less dynamic Maya fights any day of the week over what we got in earlier seasons. And I really like the story plot points for this. I'm not here for these kind of Mortal Kombat type fight scenes. If you were here for that, I mean, I do think there's hope, right? You can have well choreographed fight scenes in Maya, but you can't have well choreographed and well animated fight scenes in Poser. So,
Margaret, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's just the combination of like losing Monty and also just adjusting to the new engine. I think it just made for a combo that wasn't really going to win, but they did their best, and I think it's still good. Like, I don't watch it like solely for the fights, so I'm still enjoying it.
Agreed. I think that's it. It really was like they had like a learning curve here. They had to make a lot of adjustments, and so there was going to be issues. And I think all things considered, they did pretty well. Other like small things. The sequence in I like the Crow versus Tyrion fight, but Allie, you pointed this out, and I agree with this. The sequence where Crow punches Tyrion feels kind of weird.
Yeah,
To kick off the song.
The song is played in universe.
It's diegetic.
It's the beat.
The diegetic sound.
Showmanship. Damn.
I watched that fight like so many times. It's actually probably one of my favorite fights in all of RWBY. But every time I watch that scene, I'm trying to figure out like what is happening when he's just like, I'm just gonna punch him, and I'm like, I just like don't get it. I don't know. It's just a weird
or
part.
bad luck and charm.
God,
He just has a very punchable face.
that's
Yeah, he's
true.
definitely
Actually,
funny face. Yeah.
Crow's just like, fuck it. I want to deck this guy. Like, there's no better way to do this.
how I feel when I saw Oscar too.
Oh my god.
Oh, there's a whole slide for that. There's a whole slide.
That's why I always forget until I'm watching Volume 4. I'm like so much, man. It's because of Oscar, by the way. It's like, okay, bro.
There's also, Allie, you were pointing out how, like, the, like, poses and the faces are, like, there's, like, a noticeable shift in how those are done from the previous
I think
ones.
it's probably like Margaret was saying, where it's like a learning curve thing, and probably like I'm sure it's also like a huge like time constraint issue too, where I feel like there's a lot of times where like poses or like silhouettes of characters aren't very like interesting to look at. They feel very like, I don't know, I don't want to say lazily posed, but like they feel like they weren't able to take the time they probably needed to, and just like some of the non-fight scenes. And then like a lot of facial expressions, especially when they're like when they're trying to show fear, or like they do the thing where their eye pupils get really small and their eyes like get really wide. Those like all read kind of like a little bit awkward to me still. Like they're not like they haven't quite nailed down those expressions like the way they probably should have. And I don't know if it's a model issue or if it's just an issue of working with like all these new character rigs, but it just seems like a little awkward at times. There's also like a weird thing with oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying they're trying to play with their new toys in Maya that they didn't have a. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, did you know we have a water sim now? And we paid for this and we're gonna use it. It's like
There's also like there's just like a couple characters that, and I think it's mostly like a few of the guys. It's like really obvious in like son, I think, and and like the glimpses we get of Adam were like they feel like they like are holding in a breath and have like perfect posture at all times. And there's like no slope to like their shoulders or anything. They just feel like their arms are kind of like dangling at their sides a bit.
There's a lot of
creepy Ironwood.
Oh right, the janky Ironwood arms. I'm gonna have to find that and like put it on screen. So hopefully I can. If you have those screenshots, send them to me after we finish recording, because I gotta slip those in somewhere.
In the juxtaposition between the poses being more realistic and less cartoony, this isn't necessarily in a fight scene, but in that one shot where Ruby is dragging Jean for having that bunny on his sweatshirt, her head swells up as the kind of 2D animation shot of the screen. And if that had happened in a previous volume, it wouldn't have felt so wildly out of place. But with these more realistic models, with these more realistic movements, I was like, wow, that looks terrible. We'd have to let that go.
Like a flashback to V1 where she's like a chibi for like a second.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well,
Stuff
it's
like
like
that doesn't work anymore.
it's interesting.
In my opinion, it never worked in the first place.
I agree.
Yeah, it's kind of true. I think there's like, well, it's interesting because there are some parts where they mix 2D assets like really, really well with like Maya in this season. Because I guess I can't say for sure, but a lot of the scenes where Weiss is walking through the mansion, I'm pretty sure most of those are like 2D drawings.
Oh, like
And,
matte
like,
paintings?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I obviously can't be totally 100% sure, but I remember watching it and being like, oh my god, I don't think those are like actually modeled, and it's like impressive that it still looks like it blends really well. If it's not, I'm just like totally wrong. But
I mean, it's like
that was one of those moments I was like, oh, it seems like there's actually an upgrade in mixing the 2D and 3D assets.
I mean, Mercedes was talking earlier, like, they have upgraded their backdrops a lot in general, and I think that just, ties into that, where it's like they have a much better understanding of, like, how to blend the 2D and 3D assets and how to just, like, make better 2D assets so they don't feel out of place.
Yeah.
Alright. I feel like when people shit on Volume 4, aside from the fights, the other big issue people have is the pacing. People take a lot of issue with how sort of slow this volume is. And, like, we got into that, like, a little bit before, but, I don't know if anyone has, like, particularly strong opinions on this.
I maybe don't agree. I think something Volume 4 does that Volume 5 doesn't is the 3 threads that are going on don't feel that they're being forced to happen at the same pace. It feels like they're naturally happening at the same pace, where in Volume 5, it's like, wow, we really need this point to happen at this point, so this plot line has to be really extended to match with the other thread.
Timeline.
Yeah, so, yes,
But I
it
think
feels...
all those timeline rushes are because of how it was laid out in Volume 4.
I'd have to really look at it, but Volume 4 feels like 3 threads come together naturally, and Volume 5 feels like this thread's taking a lot longer, so fuck the other 2, we're just gonna make them really slow.
I feel like reverse, like exact reverse. Like the threads all feel like kind of discordant to me in Volume 4.
Well, it's because,
Which
like...
one did you want less time on?
Well, none of them are actually,
Oscar.
Oh, I don't even count. I've forgotten. If Oscar was in the shot, if it came up to the farm, I just completely skip by that one. I mean...
It's like so much more time than you remember until you're watching it, and then you're like, oh man, it's like all Oscar.
Oh my god.
Yeah, if we're talking about Oscar, fuck that guy. Less of him.
Also, it feels to me like Weiss's storyline feels like it's a couple weeks, whereas Ruby's is like a couple months, and so
Blake
I don't know.
isn't even caught up in Volume 5. Like, they're like, several months from now, it's going to be Attack on Haven.
Yeah, I could not place Blake's storyline with anyone's, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you tried to construct an actual timeline of what's going... This is one of those things where, like, it didn't bother me when I was watching it, but I think if you were to, like, lay it out, it would look kind of janky, where it's like, why does it take them this long to get from here to here? Or how long is Weiss stuck at home? Like, when do all the threads converge, basically? And it wouldn't quite add up.
I guess I mean more, I think the screen time dedicated to each thread feels appropriate.
Yeah.
With the exclusion of Oscar.
I would agree with you there.
I think I would agree. I think for me, what feels strange in terms of like plotting and pacing in this arc is like the is like the Ren and Nora portion of it, because
Yes.
I could tell that they wanted, if you were like trying to like work backwards from like the show, I feel like they were trying to have something at the end of the season that is like a climax, but they couldn't actually put like actual climax that happened in season 5 here. So they were trying to put like something that felt like rewarding as like an audience member to watch. But the problem is like this whole thing with Ren and Nora's backstory has never been an issue up until this season, and then they introduce it, it becomes a problem, and then it gets solved all in like, you know, like one season. So it feels like very unsatisfying.
Like the back half of the volume too, right? Like it's like one storyline amongst 4 in the back half of one volume. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It very much feels like they introduce it, it becomes a problem, they solve it, and then it doesn't really become relevant again. Maybe they will find a way to tie it into something in like volume 8, because it does feel like we're getting... It feels like Ren is on the verge of something. I don't know exactly what, but like, you know, even that may not really tie into like what we learned about him from this volume. But yeah, I 100% agree with you, Allie. I think the weirdness around that plotline came from the fact that volume 4 and 5 are really one story that like it really should have been one volume, but because there was so much they wanted to do, it had to be 2. And because of that, volume 4 on its own in isolation feels unsatisfying, because there's just not a ton happening. And I understand the utility of that, but I think especially like if you were watching it live, like you were watching all these these came out, like you wait an entire year to see what's gonna happen after volume 3, and then this is the extent of what you get. It's like, that's fucking it. That's all we're getting. That's the most you can accomplish. Like, yeah, I can understand how that would be like kind of frustrating.
I do often feel if I had been watching RWBY live, I would have been like, what the hell? Like for volume 4.
Yeah, that was honestly, I think that was a huge reason 4 felt disappointed for a lot of people. Is because season 3, I know for a lot of people is like the best season for a lot of people, and so to then have to wait so long and be like, oh, there wasn't really any development in the overall plot at all. So
the Renora and Oscar volume, what is going on here? Like, I think if you're a Renora fan, you must have loved this volume, though.
The Renora fans do like this volume, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Margaret, I feel like, were you saying something?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I feel like the writers might have just like bitten off way too much more than they could chew with 4 and 5. Like there were just too many stories that needed to be told, and they didn't really have the not skill, but like it was just weren't practiced at carrying on so many stories at once, I think. And I think the story suffered for that. But it's easier to watch as a whole as opposed to having to watch it live.
Yeah.
It's not as difficult now.
I hear what everybody's saying, but a lot of the moments that we pointed out were these kind of quiet moments that we liked. Like we liked the video, we liked these kind of quiet exchanges between the two characters. And if 4 and 5 had been condensed into one season, we would have lost all of that. All of that would have been cut for time.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they should have been like combined or anything, but like I think the actual storylines, like they did the quiet moments well, but the storylines themselves didn't carry as comfortably as they could have. And I think that was just like the writers like now having real story to write and not know, like that's where we get all the info dumps. Like they weren't exactly sure how to tell it, and this is what we got.
Yeah, like part of why I'm like the volume 4 apologist is that I think that part of why a lot of the characters felt thin and, you know, there wasn't a lot to work with in the early volumes is because it was always at such like a breakneck pace of like, you know, we've got these really short episodes and we have to like constantly keep moving. And it felt like sometimes there wasn't really time to develop people out, which made, you know, moments like, I don't know, burning the candle stand out even more because suddenly you get some actual like depth and introspection. Whereas volume 4 really focused in on that at the cost of, you know, progressing the story forward at like, you know, a more natural pace. And I think they found sort of a balance with that going forward. But yes, it feels like growing pains, and it feels like having a lot you want to do and not quite being able to like deliver it in a way that's satisfying.
Because like volume 6, they start to really get a handle on it more. Like they have like quiet moments, but also a really quick pace, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, they figured themselves out by 6, but 4 they were struggling a bit.
I don't know if we have to like go into more detail on the info dumping, but like this is still, it's just like a running issue with this show that anytime you have like, there's just big blocks of exposition that they just drop into your lap occasionally, because like how else are we gonna...
Wachowski instinct.
How else are we... There's a lot of Wachowski influence here, that's for sure. I mean, someone once described it as the Matrix with anime girls, like for the early or the Matrix with lesbians is like the early volumes, and like
would like to see Keanu Reeves as Ruby Rose.
Oh man. Final point on this. Is there a good reason why Team Ranger can't take a train to Mistral?
Max, the communication towers.
And
why
like,
would
if you go back to the Mistral train station in V6, like, you can see on the train board, there's a lot that's like crossed out.
Yeah, the communication towers knocked out everything in smaller towns.
Even the trains?
Yeah, they're like
it's weird because Oscar takes the train.
That was what was bothering me, but like yeah,
Oscar does take
that's
the train.
that's why it bugged me, because we see him take a train, but no one else can.
I don't know.
Maybe like, yeah, because they were coming all the way from.
Like, was he just closer? Like what? Like, and he was in a podunk town when he was taking the train.
Yeah, but the west quadrant is fine. It's just the eastern ones that were knocked out.
I don't know.
You just have to ignore it for the plot.
Yeah.
Maybe
You
there.
just had to accept it.
I think maybe there's something to be said for the train board, but like that's a very small detail that pops up 2 volumes from now, and so I feel like just watching this live, seeing Oscar take a train is like, well, what the fuck were we doing with Ranger this whole time, you know?
Yeah, to see it happen at the same time. I actually never really thought about that before.
I don't know. Maybe this is just me, again, being a stupid doo-doo ass forgetting about the communications tower. I'm sure people will have things to say about this. We actually already... There's more nitpicks. We actually talked about the Pumpkin Pete thing already, and just, like, doing that kind of shtick just doesn't work as well when you've switched to, like, a different style, basically.
It's also like, it just went on for so long, and I was like, it's not that funny. It's just like, please stop. Stop.
No one else was.
It definitely feels like a joke that was carried on just a little bit too long. Weiss uses Casey Lee Williams as her singing voice and sounds nothing like Casey Lee Williams.
Yeah, that was a weird diegetic moment for like the sound, because like you only had seen it before in like the trailers, which the trailers all feel like another world basically.
Yes.
And then like seeing it actually happen in the show, it was another moment that I was like, oh my god, it's like really, really weird, and it doesn't fit.
It reminds me a bit of, I don't know where I saw this, I cannot remember it, but it was like, there was, some like really old movie where the star was, I don't know the actress's name, but she played, I think the character is Frenchie in Grease.
Grease?
Yeah, but she has like a really thick like New York accent, and there's some terrible movie she's in where she like does a song in one part, and the woman they have like doing her voice has this like really like beautiful like operatic singing voice, and the contrast is hysterical.
What's the name of the song?
You light up my life.
You light up my life. You give me hope.
And this is not quite to that effect, but yeah, it's like these are not the same people, and that is very obvious.
I do like that Casey Lee Williams is Weiss's singing voice, because it explains why there's so many more Weiss songs. Because she's writing them all.
There's lore. Weiss is very much, yeah, Weiss is like the Umi of the soundtrack. She writes all the lyrics.
The soundtrack to Ruby is just Weiss's diary.
Yeah. Yes. It's adapted poetry. This is not the Love Live podcast. Can't go off on that direction.
It's the next one.
There's like a weird throwaway line where Tyrion calls Jean interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, but it
Made
gave
me
rise to
mad.
like Period and John shippers, right? Like people ship them now.
Oh,
with that line.
What is the answer? That Tyrion can sense his aura?
Yeah, maybe because he breaks auras. Like that's his semblance, right? There's something there.
Oh,
I would assume it's because he can see Jean's aura. As just Kira said, he had like a massive aura, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because his
Yeah.
semblance is tied into his aura being enormous too.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
my best guess. Tyrion.
I really hope that's all it is. Because I was like, when it happened, I was like, God, I hope this isn't like a setup that John is like plot important. Because I don't want to like
Care about John.
care about John.
You didn't. The last thing we need is him being some form of chosen one.
I hate
Yeah,
to break it to you, but
that's
that's
what I'm
gonna
really
happen with him
scared of.
eventually.
Oh, no.
I feel like that's coming.
Smother me with a pillow before that happens.
Christ. Other throwaway line that bothered me is Salem has some line when she's talking to Cinder where like the way it's phrased makes it sound like Cinder is weak to the Silver Eyes because of her maiden powers, and I think what she was getting at is that she's weak to the Silver Eyes because she's part Grimm, and she's part Grimm because that's how they were extracting the maiden powers from the
I
Fall
think so
Maiden.
too. I think you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
But it's
Just a poorly written line.
it's
Yeah.
just a bad
It's
yeah,
so very
Confusing.
it's just a bad line that makes it confusing. Ugh. All right, we have discourse to get into.
Oh boy.
Let's date in a discourse.
All right, I feel like one of the most contentious parts of this volume is the Yangst, and Yang's whole segment, which we have not talked about yet. I feel about this similar to how I feel about the rest of the characters' sort of fallout after Volume 3, in that, like I said, I really admire, like, the sort of the balls it takes to sort of slow down the story like this, and well, for Ranger force us to grieve, and for Yang sort of put us in the mind of someone who is like experienced like severe trauma and is like struggling to recover from that. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, but I don't think everyone feels that way.
Oh, the Yanks is actually very important to me in this volume. Like that's probably what I take away most from Volume 4 is like the fact that Yang is given an entire volume to deal with what happened to her. Like maybe she shouldn't have been given that much time, but I love that I got it for her because you really get to see her like terms and breathe with us.
I'm really curious what other people think about it because I was watching it and being kind of like frustrated with it and I honestly can't even totally pin down why, because I wasn't sure if it was like an issue where it wasn't like set up properly like earlier, because I've had issues with Yang's character in the earlier volumes where I feel like she's not as like developed in terms of like character motivation or like personality as the other three main Ruby girls are. And so I can't tell if it's like an issue of that or now that she's like in such a contrasting like emotional like personality state that it feels weird, or if there's issues where like the logic I suppose of like this her like character arc here doesn't totally make sense. I don't know. I was struggling a lot with like why this just isn't like very emotionally effective for me.
I think for me, it's like in the first 3 volumes, a lot of Yang's exuberance comes from how invincible she feels, and that's so tied to her semblance, right? And so now this is a Yang being like, I can be defeated and coming to terms with that kind of thing. And I found that journey interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's like the part that is like where it gets like confusing for me. And I suppose it doesn't have to make all like logical sense because it's something like PTSD, like anxiety, depression that she's feeling isn't like a logical thing. But as like a viewer, it has to make like progressional sense, where like you could tell like the steps that she's like taking in like the stages of like, I guess not grief, but like of the emotions she's feeling, where she has like these traumatic like scenes where she drops the cup and she suddenly is like a traumatic flashback to like when she lost her arm, but then like she jokes really easily with her dad about how like she lost her arm, but then like there's like moments where she's talking to the teachers where she's like, that's not the issue. and it's kind of like, okay, well, what is like the problem? Because it's kind of confusing, like what is like the thing that is like causing her to be struggling so hard.
I could see that. I think for me, a lot of Yang is based in performance. So like her performing like kind of like insouciance about her injury feels very natural to me.
Yeah.
The first time I watched this, coming off the cusp of Pyrrha being dead, I was like, wow, this is a lot of whining about losing a limb. And then I realized that it's not really kind of about that. It's the trauma and the PTSD and her feelings towards Adam. It's the complicated, perhaps angry feelings towards Blake. It's the losing the sense of self and the invincibility and she's strong. She's the one that can take one for the team. And now she's kind of feeling a little broken. And I think it takes her a long, winding path to get there. But I like it. I think it's really ballsy to give this character who was really underdeveloped up until this point time to process those emotions.
Yeah, this for me is really where like I see Yang's character arc actually kind of started, because I feel like she didn't have much in the previous volumes. So this for me is like really setting up the like idea of her like previous like strength in like contrast like the reality of it, and then like how she has to deal with it moving forward.
I mean, in
like,
her
character arc.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Her previous strength is kind of unearned in a way, right? Like, yeah, I do really well in these simulated fights at my school where no one's really going to get hurt. I think her strength really comes from getting kicked to the ground and getting back up again. So her strength and her perfection and her unyieldingness before is very performative. And then once she gets back up again, I think it's very...
But she learns to fight smarter, right? Like she becomes a realer person.
It's just like her semblance. She gets hit and hits back twice as hard.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I think Pug, I like the way you phrased it more than I think they actually delivered it in the show. I think the show just didn't deliver it like quite as well as I like wish it had.
Yeah, that's valid. I definitely think there are probably really great missing scene fics from this chapter of Yang processing in a way that maybe, I guess I'm saying I'm so glad they gave the screen time for this, and you're saying, wow, I'm glad they gave the screen time. I just wish they delivered, and yes, that is
Yeah.
I feel like this journey of Yang is integral for Bumblebee fic writers too, right? There's always a sad Yang.
Oh, totally. You gotta have the Yangs in order to grow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Pug, I like what you said about like invincibility, because I think that really is like the consistent thread with her. And like Allie, I would agree that like it definitely could have been set up better, but I think there is sort of a through line where you look at like how Yang acts in the early volumes, where it's like, I mean, she rides around on a motorcycle. She like goes into a nightclub filled with goons while she's like underage just to get information about her mom. Her whole fighting style is based around like flying head first into things and, just sort of like punch first, ask questions later. And so, yeah, and like the whole line about like being a thrill seeker, it's all about sort of like it's the invincibility and then the trauma of realizing that actually she is quite vincible, and I think there is like a clear through line there, but also that's something that, we have to do some of that work for the writers.
Unfortunately, I think it's one of the situations, I feel like fandom has probably helped Yang a lot, where like the show has been like, not, I guess like slacking is probably isn't the best word, but especially these like early volumes, I'm sure that like the fandom has done a really good job like actually fleshing her character out more than the show, I think, itself has given her credit.
I think that's what hooks fandom a lot, is when there's something that you see potential to flesh out,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how, that's the entire premise of like Marvel fanfic. It's like, there's so little here, but we can do something with it. We can do something.
Yeah, like, look at Coulson and Hawkeye.
Oh my god, you really wrote that up there, huh?
Take no prisoners. Like I said, like, people fall asleep to this. No one's gonna be listening at 2 hours. Alright.
Boo. Mood.
All right, I feel like people are kind of split on Oscar. Allie, you are I feel like you're the resident Oscar liker.
Am I the one that likes Oscar here? I don't really care for him in this volume. This volume, he does, like, literally nothing. So it's kind of weird that, like, I don't know, we're bringing him up here, but I guess it is, like, the part he shows up in. I feel like he just doesn't do anything, and, like, the actual interesting Oscar stuff happens in, like, the later volumes.
Hold on.
But I'm curious, I'm really curious, I don't know, like, again, I don't interact with the fandom, so I'm curious, like, why people, like, dislike him, or, like, the point of division for Oscar.
Yeah.
I think he's not. I think he's cute and like, and he's got like, he's kind of bland. He hasn't really developed, but I don't see anything wrong with him. Like, he could have a little more personality, but I don't hate him.
Pug.
So I don't really interact with the fandom outside of Max's Patreon Discord server that much, so I don't know what the general opinion is. I just personally think these humble bumble characters that are like thrust into greatness because of something that has nothing to do with them are very difficult to pull off.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, this whole season is kind of about all of this character growth, the things we've gone through together. And then Oscar just pops up and he's like, hey, I'm nice, I'm humble, I don't have a lot of character development outside of that. And now this thing has just fallen into my lap and I'm going to go through that, reluctance phase a little bit. And then suddenly I'm going to become this part of the team through no effort of my own. And those characters just really rub me the wrong way. It's a character that a lot of male fans, I'm sure, project onto. Yeah.
What I'm like hoping that they, and I think they're kind of setting up for, I don't know, but what I'm hoping they actually end up doing with him is this kind of like, he's like turning into someone else, like kind of thing. The problem I see is like, that's already here is that like, we don't even know who Oscar like really is prior to like all of this like Ozpin coming into his body thing.
Right, we'll never really know like how much is really Oscar and how much is actually Ozpin.
Yeah, which I already see like the issue with like that like thing, even though that's the thing I'm hoping that they do actually end up doing.
Yeah, I think part of the issue with Oscar is that thing that we talked about a bit earlier, how Volume 4 really is just a lot of setup for Volume 5, and because of that, like, we have to spend all this time showing like Oscar like introducing him and having him like come to terms with like having Ozpin inside his brain and like actually set out on his journey, but we get no payoff from that until later. And so we basically just spend a lot of screen time on this character who we don't have a lot of reason to be invested in, and we don't really get more information on until later.
There's nothing specific about Oscar. I mean, at this point, we're really developing all of these characters. There's things we like really love about them. They have, you know, strong aesthetics, strong personalities. And then it's just like this farmer kid.
He doesn't get a lot of payoff in this volume.
I don't know that he ever does.
Maybe someday.
I just have a feeling one day I'm going to be like, yeah, you know, when Ironwood did that thing, I was happy.
Fuck them kids. No, we'll get the Oscar character development when Rose Garden becomes canon.
I do kind of think Rose Garden will become canon.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I hope not.
I'd put money on that.
I mean, even his design is like, I'm this cinnamon roll that's done nothing wrong, and now this, oh no, this greatness has just been thrust upon me. Whatever shall I do?
Yeah, what's this male YA protagonist doing in Ruby?
He's just a small bean, uwu.
Yeah, I imagine that if I ever looked on like his Twitter thread, I would be miserable.
Like on Oscar's Twitter, like his account?
No, like what people are saying about him. Like, I've never done anything wrong. Here's a gif of him, and he has freckles.
Yeah, he definitely would have a flower crown put on him in 2013.
They don't even need to add freckles to him. He already has them.
He should add freckles to others, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yang.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have freckles.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, well, I mean, this is one of the, like, the principles of being on Tumblr is that, like, after, given enough time, every character will get fan art of them with freckles. Like, it's just, I don't know why, they're just everywhere.
The Yang ones have stuck, though. Like, Yang just has freckles in my head now.
Yeah.
Some other stuff that people are sort of like split on. I feel like this is less like a point of contention and more like a whole like fan theory thing, but I think this is the beginning of like the Schnee family trauma theories. Does anyone here know about these?
No.
I think I read it somewhere.
It's the trauma response thing.
Like how the abuse victim like responds to their
Yes.
abuser or something. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's fascinating.
Do you want to lay this out?
I don't remember I don't remember the specifics. It's like Winter is the one who I don't remember the
Oh,
specifics
is
of
this
it.
the fight, flight, or fawn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Winter is like, I think, right?
Yeah.
Winter is flight, Weiss is fight, and Whitley is fawn.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a fourth one for their mom, but she hasn't shown up yet.
Oh.
Where the fourth one is just like kind of like fading into the background, basically. Wait, did we lose someone? No, sorry.
No.
Paranoid.
I'm going in and out. I've been going in and out for like 10 minutes.
Oh God. Well,
Notice that.
we got. You know what? You've been there when it counts, so it's fine. It's fine. It's cool. It's Daijobu. But yeah, I think that's real. That's one of those things where it's really interesting. Where it's like I have no idea if the writers are doing this on purpose. Or if it's just like a cool thing that happened to work out this way. I do think there's a lot of like, I think the writers legitimately do care about like representing like trauma and how people respond to it in this show, because I know that like I've seen multiple people say like, yeah, I have PTSD and like I relate really hard to like Yang scenes in these volumes. So it's like, I feel like someone here did their research. So this is one of the few instances where I feel like we can actually give them credit as opposed to just being like, you know, like the fandom giving it more depth than it has, if that makes sense.
Well, and the fandom might be what put a name to it, but them just trying to like having different versions of how people express like reactions to that sort of abuse makes sense that the writers would have thought into that. Like they might not have been like this psychological premise, but being like, what different ways do people respond feels intentional.
Yeah. Other random stuff. This is like a very minor thing, but it's something I've seen a lot of, and so it sticks out to me, is I see so many people on like Twitter and Tumblr with like headcanons where Ruby has an eye patch, or like fan art where Ruby has an eye patch.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't realize, I think the genesis of that is this line where like Tyrion is talking about like Ruby to Cinder, and he's like, well, like, you know, if I found her, well, she took your eye, and then does like his maniacal giggle or whatever. And I think that might be the origin of all the like eye patch Ruby fan art.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
I would love that for her design. I think it would be great, but the scene would be too graphic for the show.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
they did-
Well, they had the whole scene
With
in where-
Maria?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they flashed her eye. Or what about like Volume 7? They did some pretty gross stuff.
Oh yeah, the Tyrion wrist sneakers.
The
Ugh.
Ironwood and the shield.
Oh yeah, that too.
But those things don't happen to Ruby, is more my point.
Oh, that's true. But
I feel like it could be done where you see where it like it stings, but they don't like linger on it for too long, if that makes sense. I don't know. This show can surprise you.
Like, I don't think it would be the best, like, as far as storytelling, because, like, I feel like we've already got someone who's, like, suffered, like, a major, like, losing an arm. So I think, like, another person on the team losing another body part might be too much, but that's just me. Just my opinion. But
I will say if they do that, then Lindsay Jones is going to have to, like, preemptively tell people not to give her eye-related things at cons. Because I know that Barbara Dunkelman had to tell people to stop giving her, like, mannequin arms. Because
that's so dark.
so
Oh my
many
God.
people gave her arms at conventions. She's like, stop, I have, like, a whole closet full of these things.
oh my god.
She just sold them, been like, get an official
These eyes
Yang
are a
arm.
lot smaller and easier to store.
That's
Just
true.
have a
You
marble bag full of, like, little marble eyeballs.
know when people have bowls of matchbooks on their like
Oh,
coffee
yeah.
table? Yeah.
I feel like What's funny about those is that they're so much for the aesthetics, because I've tried, like, I used to be roommates with a guy who had one of those, and I had a bunch of candles, and so I'd try to, like, actually use the matches, and they all sucked. They were terrible matches. And I was like, this only works as a centerpiece. There's, like, no utility here.
It's a flex on, like, the cool places you've been. You get them at, like, cool bars and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you never use the matches.
Is this the same guy that had the bowl of lemons?
Yes!
Did it make the room pop?
It did!
It did!
Nice.
Some good citrus.
Made me happy every time I saw it, so it had purpose.
Exactly. Alright. I could have put this on the other slide, but you know what? This is discourse. Is Sun problematic for following Blake onto the boat?
Yeah, kinda. I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those.
problematic behavior.
Yeah, for me, it's like one of those things where like, he did it, and like the like payoff that you get for the fact that he did it in the first place is like really sketchy.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
Blake definitely needed an emotional push too, right? But
Right,
he did
yeah.
follow her on a
But
boat.
the way it was executed was not very good.
And did he kind of stalk her in a cloak for a couple days first, anyway?
Oh, yeah, that was
and, like,
very
she
weird.
looks over her shoulder and he runs off or something.
Yeah, it's like, I understand, like, you have to get these two in the same place at the same time, but of all the ways to do it, it feels like they sort of had to contrive a reason, and what they ended up with wasn't great.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
like
I think
his little
problematic
mom-
is a strong word.
Yeah, I think it's like goofy, but not necessarily like problematic.
Well, problematic
Yes,
is also...
boundaries a little bit, but I think he grows. But
I think if Blake had been like, son, this was really inappropriate. I feel really unhappy that you're here. I'm super uncomfortable. He would have left.
Agree. I mean, is Crow problematic for following them? No.
Well, he's like a parental figure, that's
He's also like their
Well,
chaperone,
yeah.
yeah.
Yang had asked him specifically.
Did Yang? I thought Ty did.
No, I think it was. I thought it was Yang, but I could be wrong.
Well, Yang didn't know he could fly after her.
That's true. I think it was Ty. Someone in the comments will know, and we will get corrected.
Oh, I'm sure.
Margaret getting taken to task.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
It's alright. People will
What
come...
is the soundtrack Discord?
Oh, it's about her bike.
What?
Song is all.
There isn't a lot to say about this one, but I had to put it on here because it's like a very infamous discourse and it's funny. Okay, everyone here has heard Bumblebee, right?
Yeah, it's like
Oh, yeah.
probably my favorite Ruby song.
It's very good. Like, I shit on the music, and even I think Bumblebee is good. But it's also very, like, you can't have a song called Bumblebee and have it be a love song and, like, not imply that. Like, there's no other, like, good explanation for that. But people tried to find one.
Said it was about her bike. That's so
Yes.
stupid.
Bumblebee the bike.
That's
There's
like-
a part where she goes to be alone with her bike because she loves it so much.
That's so weird. Like that's like so like disillusioned.
I feel like when you say it's about her bike, you're saying some weird things about how Yang feels about her bike too.
Yeah, that's so strange.
It feels like a cope, is what it feels like. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone was like there. I don't think oh right, because all of us started. Well, Allie, you've been watching since the beginning, but you don't engage with the discourse.
Yeah.
So you
That seems very like such like a weird like thing that probably like Black Sun shippers were like, no, it's not about Bumblebee. It's not about the ship, guys. It's like it's because Black Sun's canon, guys. It's not can't be about Bumblebee the ship. It just can't.
I honestly think like there isn't like I think the animosity between like Black Sun and Bumblebee shippers gets a little overblown, where it's like there is probably like there's like specific groups of people in either camp who just love getting into Twitter fights or whatever, and will make it into a thing anytime something like this happens. But like, I don't know. on the
Yeah, I
whole.
feel like the general haters of Bumblebee aren't like true hardcore Black Sun shippers necessarily. They just hate Bumblebee.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
The people who really hate Bumblebee are like Adam stans.
Yeah.
Gross.
Oh wait, excuse me.
Adam.
Adam stans.
Like, I feel like there's a lot of like, kind of like, oh, you between Black Sun and Bumblebee sometimes, like the shippers. Like, I
I've
feel
seen
like
a
they
lot of
follow
things on Reddit. Like people are a lot more aggressive about Black Sun, from what
Yeah.
I've noticed. The Bumblebee shippers,
Yeah, I think
Oh,
there's
yeah, I
like
guess I come from Tumblr where it's less. Yeah.
like the aggressive Black Sun people too.
there's definitely elements of it that like come out here and there, but I don't know. I think at the end of the day, most people are pretty fine with everyone shipping whatever they want. Doesn't get it only gets like really contentious with like certain people who enjoy the thrill of the discourse.
Oh yeah, people just like arguing for the sake of arguing.
Exactly. All right. We've been going for a sufficient amount of time. Final thoughts.
Sufficient amount of time.
It's sad because like there's no reason for you to be making fun of me for that, and yet it still hurts. It speaks to something about me.
You're just very like distinct, like you're exact. It's good.
Just it's like I'm the kid in the group project demanding everyone else get their work in on time.
Absolutely.
That is
That's
you.
absolutely your role. Who's the kid who doesn't show up until like the final exam?
You.
Oh, burn on me.
Oh, burn.
Oh, those are rare.
All right. Final thoughts. Pug.
I, in general, really like this volume. I think there's a lot of fun moments with it. If you're watching for the first time and you miss some of that cool fight choreography and you want a little bit more punching, stick around.
Allie.
Yeah, I think this volume is really great in the way it slows down and really gives a lot of time to develop the really traumatic events and like aftermath that happened in volume 3. And I think it's don't let it like any like negative stuff I'd say we talk about turn you away from it, because I think a lot of like Pug said, the fight stuff gets way better. They really find a better balance of like the slower moving character stuff and the plot driven stuff later, and it's just a great volume overall.
Margaret.
Yeah, it's not my favorite volume, but it's still a pretty important one. It like is all about like the transition and getting people to develop their own independence and figure out their game plan and just set things up in general for the next volume and beyond. And it's good. Not my favorite, but good.
Merc.
Again, yeah, I agree that I think Volume 4 is a little slow. I think it holds a lot more weight when you think of it in tandem with Volume 5, because they are like one giant volume wholly.
Yes.
But, you know, they were in a time of growth, and I really respect that for them. And I think, yeah, with the whole arc of Ruby 1 to question mark, Volume 4 is like an important part of the show completely, even if I think it's a slog to rewatch.
And we'll get into how it sets up for Volume 5 in the next episode. Thank you everyone so much for watching and or listening. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Everyone say bye.
Bye.
Bye.